What's going on, guys? This is Saturday Afternoon Wrestling, and it is a great day to talk about wrestling because we are 1 week away from Bad Blood. And honestly, I thought this was going to be a normal episode, kind of run through everything that had happened throughout the week. There were some good matches. We have some huge news on the WWE side. We have a huge title change. We had huge debuts in AEW. We'll get to all of that, but I wake up to the news that Tony Khan and AEW are opting to add injury time to the contract of Rey Fenix, who was, as of last week, supposedly like 1 foot out the door and 1 foot into WWE, with WWE already printing masks and merchandise and all of that. So obviously that rumor was then kind of shot down last week. This week we have this, which has been confirmed by a few sources. I will get to that later on and what that means, and kind of try to unpack all of that. It was a surprising thing to wake up and see. So we will get to that in a little bit, I promise. Before that, I just want to run through everything else that happened. So we will start with Monday Night Raw, which built the whole show basically around the main event, which was the IC title match between Jey Uso and the champion Braun Breaker. And it's funny because they were so over the top with pointing out how many times Jey Uso has come up short in those big moments for those singles titles that it kind of felt like, okay, he has to win. But then at the same time, it was like, no, they're making it so obvious there's no way he could win. And ultimately, we get a great moment, one of the best feel good moments of the year. Jey Uso is the new Intercontinental Champion. He pins Braun Breaker 1, 2, 3. The crowd goes absolutely insane. He goes out into the crowd. He's crying in the crowd, thanking everybody. Jackie Redmond's fighting back tears, interviewing him in the crowd. Everyone backstage is like such a cool moment. And he's someone who has been on an unbelievable hot streak for the last couple months. Really, since he came on to Monday Night Raw and started establishing himself as just main event Jey Uso on his own. So it's incredible to see it. I don't know what his reign is going to look like, in terms of how long he'll have it or anything, but we will always have that moment. And more importantly, I think as we start to get in towards November with Survivor Series, War Games, and the likely Bloodline versus Bloodline Civil War type match, I think it's an interesting dynamic if Jey Uso is the one who walks back into the original Bloodline lineup with the title, like with a title, I should say, and he's the only one with a title. If it ends up being, like we kind of think, like Roman, Jimmy and Jay, and Sammy, Jay being the only one with a title creates an interesting dynamic there. And so maybe they keep it on him through there. Maybe this was just to get a good moment and to finally give him that win, after so many years of coming up short. And the match was great. Braun Breaker is an absolute star already. He's only going to get better and better, and it's kind of scary to think about how good he is eventually going to be one day after, a few more years on the main roster and working this style. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's on a fast track to being a huge babyface pretty soon after this, because even when he was supposed to be like the hated heel, he was getting some pretty good reactions from the crowd. So if they just tweak it a little bit and let him be, the badass that kind of just runs around and beats people up, like, it's a can't miss formula. So I can't imagine that they would have like issues executing that. So we'll see, but it does feel like they're gearing up to give him a massive babyface push as well. And this first reign was just to give him a title, establish him a little bit more on the level of kind of those guys. And then now phase 2 of the Braun Breaker main roster experiment probably incoming here. So we'll see. And then otherwise, it was a lot of building towards next week with Bad Blood, obviously. We got also an announcement for what might be the greatest match ever happening next week on Raw. It's Bronson Reed versus Braun Strowman. And it's going to be incredible. The advertisement that the video team put together for this, I can't show the whole thing because I'll probably get copyright striked, but the advertisement, like, I'm just gonna put a clip in. Like, it's the two of them as like Godzilla and Kong, but like not, because they don't have the rights to that. So it's just them like as two giant monsters fighting.
It takes a monster to beat a monster.
And this is this all comes from the start of Raw, where Bronson and Braun Strowman fought through a merchandise booth that just happened to be like in the entranceway of the arena. I think it was Dom Mysterio was pulling up in his lowrider with Liv Morgan, and they came fighting across through a merchandise stand that just happened to be there. I don't know why there would be a merchandise stand at the talent entrance of the parking lot.
Ontario, California. Oh. What?
That's Bronson Reed.
But it was incredible, and so we were going to get this match next week. I thought it might make it onto the Bad Blood card if we were going off of matches that actually contained bad blood. But either way, it's going to be incredible. And then we also got the reveal that Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan is going to be a match with Dominic Mysterio in a shark cage hanging above the ring. We did it. That meme, the Custody of Dom match, became a reality. I'm so proud of everyone for helping us get to this point. I can't believe it. It's going to be incredible. He's going to do some dastardly things, I'm sure, and it feels like the shark cage is an easy one for, like, he drops brass knuckles to Liv Morgan or who knows what, but drops her something from inside the shark cage so she can get the tainted win. But what a good dynamic. You have to kind of worry that people are going to throw things at him. I kind of, in the back of my mind, can't help but think that, like, drunk fans, like, I could easily see them trying to throw things into the ring at him. So I really hope I'm wrong on that, but I feel like you can never count out people when it comes to doing something so stupid. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that does not happen, but Bad Blood, already an exciting card, already a good matchup. Excited to see them again run it back, but Dom Mysterio in a shark cage, just, impeccable booking. And that was really pretty much it for Raw. Like I said, it was not like the best episode in the world. A lot of building towards Bad Blood, but these revelations and Jey winning the title, more than enough, I think. And then we had NXT's last episode on USA. They will be moving to the CW this week, starting this Tuesday. Really curious what that's going to look like, because there's all sorts of reports about, like, maybe a different color scheme, maybe a different presentation. Like, the NXT presentation is something that feels so curated in every iteration of NXT. It's like a brand that has been so carefully overseen that I'm curious what it'll look like transitioning over, if it's just, a new song and a couple different colors. Like, I can't imagine they would drastically change the logos. I can't imagine, major, huge overhauls, but anytime you go to a new network, there's always going to be new presentation flourishes, and I'm excited to see what NXT's is going to look like. But overall, I kind of thought this last episode on USA was a bit underwhelming. The matches kind of just were, like, rushed through. It felt like they were a little bit of an afterthought to all of the world building and all of the promos and everything. The framing of everything as a press conference also didn't really work for me. Like, I'm sure there were people that enjoyed it, and I understand if people did, because it was something different. It was interesting, but something about the press conference setting and running, like, promos like that just kind of, it feels extra scripted, and it feels extra fake to me, where, like, okay, they're having a press conference, and of course the question is about this. Now it's just a promo. And that's not to say that, like, the other times they do the press conferences, like, who knows how real or not those, like, post-show ones, the media scrums are. But this in particular felt extra kind of gimmicky to me, and so it didn't work. And then it got even worse at the end with the main event segment with Roxanne and Julia, and I guess Julia's number one translator, Funaki, the legend himself, providing translations. And the segment was a little low energy and went back and forth. It was the same, like, press conference style, but instead of being a backstage segment, it was in the ring with people asking questions from, like, outside around the ring. And it fell flat. I don't think the crowd really ever got into it. And then they kind of botched the camera angle that showed the big surprise and why this was the main event segment, which was that it was interrupted by Stephanie Vaquer, who finally made her on-screen NXT debut to basically challenge whoever wins. And that's a really interesting wrinkle into things, because all signs point to Julia beating Roxanne in this first match and becoming the new women's champion on this first CW episode. But if you run Julia Stephanie Vaquer, who loses that? Like both of them are the hot new signings. They're going to be pillars of the I guess women's division anywhere they go. Whether they stay in NXT for a little bit, go straight to the main roster on SmackDown or Raw, like whatever they do, they are going to be like the one of the linchpins of the women's division. And so I can't see either of them coming in as these highly coveted free agents and then just losing. So WWE is in an interesting spot because I don't think they can book interference or disqualification in this first match on the CW debut, but I don't think they can have Julia lose. Like I think Julia has to win. So I'm really curious to see what the booking is going to look like for this going forward. And I think that's a testament to how good this women's division is. Because yeah, overall I'm really excited to see what these two finally do. And it's a disappointment that the final go home segment was so flat because I really think that they're gonna put on a great match. And I think this kind of like stymied the excitement a little bit for it. Or maybe like cut the hype down a little bit, I guess. But we'll see. Like I said, I'm really interested in that NXT Tuesday show. I haven't decided if I'm gonna do just like a quick short live reaction or anything after that airs instead of waiting till next Saturday to record again or next Friday night to record again. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. But really cool. And obviously Stephanie Vaquer being introduced immediately into that top feud is great too. You talk about people that are just going to put on unbelievable matches in basically any setting that you put them in. Like it's a murderer's row at the top of the NXT women's division. And then tonight on SmackDown, no surprise, but we had the return of Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline. Continuingly mounting issues between Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes, who are like, I think justifiably in this they're frustrated that Cody is aligning with Roman Reigns after everything they have all been through together. They are upset that he is aligning with him so quickly, and I appreciate that that's the story. I appreciate it's that simple. And now it kind of just feels like it's a powder keg where we're going to wait and wait and wait and wait until Orton or Kevin Owens or both of them finally explode. I had the thought last week during the Cody Roman videotaped promo that they aired. I kind of thought, like, what if Cody goes heel and everyone gets swerved and he's the heel out of all of this after everything? And that would be a nice way to subvert kind of what they've been doing and like kind of the predictability of it almost, where, you know, you're just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop with KO or with Randy Orton. I think it'd be interesting. I don't think they would do it right now. So that's probably wishful thinking, if anything, but I'm really enjoying the dynamic that the three of them are bringing to this, and I enjoy that it's just a simple, logical story. Like, if Kevin Owens and Randy Orton turn on Cody Rhodes and then come out the next week and say, yeah, dude, like, we gave everything to help you, and you immediately run to go help him after all of that, like, I can hear it almost, and, like, I can't, like, say I'd be booing. Like, that's pretty sound logic, if you ask me. So really interesting. I'm glad that they're finally giving something so compelling to Cody. I'm a little disappointed that it once again comes back to the Bloodline because it kind of feels like all of his biggest title-based stories since he won at WrestleMania have been just around the Bloodline, and he hasn't really had that big story to sink his teeth into outside of maybe the AJ Styles feud when he first won. So I'm really excited to see that. I love seeing them continue this story. We also, speaking of announcing things for next week that will be awesome ahead of Bad Blood, we got announcements for 2 matches. It will be Mia Yim and Chelsea Green in a dumpster match next SmackDown next Friday, and then it will be a triple threat ladder tag team match with DIY, the Street Profits, and the Bloodline on SmackDown as well. And SmackDown has been kind of like building itself into that, like that go home SmackDown is like the big tag team match. So to get a match of that quality with those performers the night before a premium live event, it's really cool. It's going to be an incredible match. But I kind of think that Mia and Chelsea Green should main event the night with that dumpster match because the character work that Chelsea Green is doing right now is incredible. So I think if you open the show with the ladder match to really surprise everybody and then just give the women like 20 minutes in this dumpster match, whatever it's going to be, like that could be incredible. Either way, it's going to be awesome. But just the work that Chelsea Green is doing right now is unbelievable, and it's nice to see Mia Yim, aka Mishin, have things to do, have like actual storylines, especially since she's come back from that little stint in NXT. So all in all, really good. Again, not like the like craziest SmackDown episode ever. The matches were a little bit like, okay, that's kind of, it was a TV match, that was good, but we did get match 6 in the best of 7 Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes feud, and that match was awesome. They continue to just kind of go out and switch things up and run completely different matches every single time. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's amazing to watch. And these guys are so gifted together. Andrade hit this power slam on Carmelo Hayes on the ring apron with him, like he's like leaning through the ropes. It was unbelievable. I can't even really describe it, so I'm gonna put the clip right here in the video so you can see for yourself.
Has got to be feeling. Oh my goodness! Wow!
It is unbelievable. But those guys are basically guaranteed to tear the house down at any time, wherever you put them on the card in any city. And then lastly, on the WWE side of things, the Vince McMahon Netflix series has dropped this week. I have not finished the whole thing. Thought about doing like a full video review or I'm not sure yet if I will. I've seen a lot of people say that it's disappointing to big time wrestling fans, like long time wrestling fans that are kind of know the ins and outs of everything and the history. And that kind of makes sense. I'm not surprised after what I've seen, I can agree, but it's interesting because it was clearly built to be like a wrestling gateway for Netflix. So you figure Raw's moving to Netflix January 1st. That's a whole new audience that it's opening up to. That is hundreds of millions, if not billions of people that are going to be new audience to WWE. So what's the best way to integrate and ingratiate WWE and get people ready for that on this new platform is you build a documentary, you make a documentary that's basically the history of Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon, and wrestling and his impact on it over the last 50 years or so that he's been doing this. You highlight all of the big stars, all of the legends of all of the different eras, all of the controversies. You give everyone basically like a crash course in wrestling lore so that when Monday Night Raw fires up on Netflix, people are like, oh, I know a bit about this. I'll check this out now and see what it looks like here. And obviously you're going to have like the lapsed fans that are getting back into it, or you have people that have never seen it before, or you have the diehard fans that are moving over, but it feels like there's a whole nother audience to cater to. And I have to imagine that this documentary was initially set out to be like, I heard someone call it The Last Dance. Like it meant they wanted it to be the last dance of wrestling. Basically, the Michael Jordan farewell tour for the Bulls documentary that came out during COVID that kind of saved us all while we were going crazy without sports. And I think probably, but maybe a little more skewed even than that, because initially it was going to be produced by WWE. They eventually dropped out when all of the allegations against Vince McMahon came out. And so the documentary team was left to finish it like without their help or without their, I guess, official blessing, because it doesn't list them as a producer on it. They have not been promoting it. I don't think they will promote it at all, but so I think what they were doing was they set out to make something that would be like a Cliff Notes WWE history and Vince McMahon background for fans of all types, whether you're a lapsed fan, casual fan, diehard fan. They would make it for the widest possible audience that they could. And then all of this stuff comes out and they realize they have to pivot to, oh, okay, so we got to touch on some awful things that Vince McMahon has allegedly done and is being investigated by the feds. The lawsuits that the victim have filed are on hold so that the federal government can investigate more, because the charges he's facing are like way worse than, just what she allegedly had to experience, which is awful. If you read anything about it, read one paragraph and you're like, how does this happen? How can one person do this to someone else? So you're faced with all of that, and now, there's kind of no winning, but you've dedicated years to this. I think I heard something in an interview with Bill Simmons and them, like, this started in like 2018, 2019. They were having meetings and talking about it and figuring out what it would look like. And you think about everything that's happened in 5 years from since then, and you have to pivot, you have to adjust. And so I think they probably realized that they had to lean even more into the bad things, which are the scandals that a lot of people know, and then also like the history aspect of it. They had to really push those B and C stories throughout the series, because you can't just come out. I mean, you could easily come out and just bury him, but with the interviews they had scheduled and all of the resources and everything, it's such an interesting tightrope to walk. And I feel like, I don't know, I have to get to the end. Like I said, I have to see it for myself before I make an actual judgment, but kind of feels like anything but kind of calling out everything that has happened that is alleged, along with everything that we know. um it feels like a no-brainer, because like you have Vince McMahon coming out saying like, there's two sides to every story, like, well, this is ridiculous, the report that he tried to buy it back so it wouldn't get aired, because that's what people that are being wronged do, right? Is they try to just squash all of the tape from coming out. And it's just, it's a shame, because it's such a good subject for a documentary. And the fact that all of these allegations have kind of, not like, I don't know, like, I don't know how to say this. Like, obviously, watching wrestling now that I watched as a kid, like watching back things from the 90s and the early 2000s, it's like, how was I watching this? Like, why was I allowed to watch this? This is crazy. Um, Seeing things like that, it's like, man, are we really that surprised that that this guy would be like a monster to people behind the scenes, would be doing these kinds of things? Like, I don't know if it's in the show yet, but there's like leaked text messages and things to the victim, and just horrible things. So I can't imagine, how do you maintain an air of, we're making a documentary about the WWE and Vince McMahon, without letting that completely influence it. So kind of seems like, it's entertaining on a surface level for diehard fans, and it'll teach people that are new to the industry, new to the history of WWE a little bit. And in the end, you can't hide or not talk about any of those allegations, all of the horrible things. But it feels like, I don't know, I like, ton of episodes on it when everyone knows what's coming at the end is tough. It's tough to maintain, like, hey, I don't need to see uh, the Montreal Screwjob for the 100th time. Like, I know like where this is all going. Let's get to it. Let's talk about what is the biggest Vince McMahon story now. Like, the man's legacy is just like, on the one hand, destroyed. You have these people out here arguing and defending. Well, we don't know, and he was good to me. So like, no, the dude's legacy is tarnished beyond belief now. With if even one of the things that were accused, that he was accused of, if one of those things is true, like, it's awful. So just a weird time for a documentary like that. And like I said, a lot of weird feelings and thoughts on it. I didn't expect to go this long on it. I might pop back and do a full review once I finish it. I can't decide. It feels like, don't know how much more needs to be said about him being an awful person, and kind of all of this coming out. Like, at least it finally came out, and things that will have to be dealt with, consequences will have to be faced. So anyways, I'm gonna get off my soapbox here. Like I said, that was more than I expected to rant on that. I apologize, but it's just, it's a tricky thing. It's an odd thing to make a documentary about the history of wrestling, this man's impact and growth on wrestling, and also like what an awful person they were. And that will be it for the WWE side of things. I'll hit on some stuff coming out of AEW. This week was Grand Slam week. I know they taped the Grand Slam Collision already that will air Saturday. I'm recording this Friday night for Saturday afternoon. So hopefully nothing major happens. I saw some spoilers and I felt pretty safe in recording this now. So if anything major happens, maybe I'll tack something on to the beginning or the end of this episode. So keep an eye on your feed, or check YouTube again. Subscribe if you are not. Make sure you don't miss anything. But the Grand Slam Dynamite, I thought, was great. We had a little bit of news that came out before the show, which was that Saraya had agreed to a 1-year deal to stay with AEW through September 2025. People had mixed feelings about that one online. Saraya, one of those people that is extremely polarizing for reasons. You Google her or search on Twitter, and you will find it very quickly. And not everyone's cup of tea, and I understand that for sure. So Saraya re-signed. We had some other contract news that I will get to in a second, of course. There's also a rumor that Daniel Garcia is now not quite as sure a thing when it comes to re-signing with AEW. The company isn't as 100% certain that he's re-signing as they were. So take that how you will. Maybe he's WWE bound. There's no real I don't think there's a firm date around when his contract is up. So continues to be just such a hotly speculated thing. And on Dynamite, there was something else that was kind of weird. I don't know if it's foreshadowing of another star potentially leaving the company, but Hook and Roderick Strong had a match for the FTW title. They went on after Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness tore the house down to open the show. And I was like, man, that's a bad spot to put these guys. Hook is very good. He's young, but he's learning, but he's awesome every time he's in the ring. Roderick Strong, about as smooth and short-handed a wrestler as you can get. What an odd place to put the two of them having this match. But they completely blew away my expectations after that. The match was great. It was a lot of fun. Both of them really made each other look like $1 million. And in the end, Hook gets the big win over Roderick Strong. And he goes out to the announce table and he retires the FTR or the FTW belt with Taz right there on commentary as well. And they share a very nice moment where he hands him the belt. He hands Taz the belt. And they hug and have a moment. And we hear that the FTW title was started by Taz 3 miles away from the arena that they were performing in Queens, New York. So a really cool full circle sentimental moment for Hook to have with Taz, for father and son to share, so close to home. That was just an awesome moment. But back in my mind, with all of this contract talk that has been going on, I could not help but think, is he retiring this because he's leaving, or is he gonna finally get the chance to move up to bigger and better things? So Hook's status is something I'm going to be watching a little more closely than I was planning on, because I'll be really interested to see. I think he is someone who has long deserved, another look. Not maybe not in the world championship, picture, but he deserves a title that will be referenced as recognized by AEW, which the FTW one constantly they mentioned it was not. So we will see. But like I said, before that match, before the Hook Roderick Strong match, we opened the show with Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. Tony Khan dropped the bag for this one because Bryan Danielson came out to the final countdown. They played it again at the end of the night. I know he has said how expensive it is to do that. I don't know if the plan is to do that this entire last full-time run that Danielson is on. That might add up pretty quick if that's what they're going to do. But it was great. Nigel McGuinness, for someone who has not wrestled regularly in I think it was 12 years, he looked very good. They got better as the match went on, and they looked stiff as hell too. They looked like they were really laying into each other, and it's probably part of what comes with knowing each other for so long and wrestling each other so much. But Nigel looked amazingly smooth in the ring for someone who has not wrestled for so long. And this build was quick, but it was built around Nigel McGuinness basically hating Bryan Danielson and wanting to expose him and take advantage kind of the weakened state that he would be in after getting assaulted by Jon Moxley and attempted murdered with a plastic bag. And then the other biggest news of the night was the debut of MVP, who came out to interrupt Prince Nana as he was providing an update on Swerve Strickland. MVP came out and basically said, yeah, Swerve Strickland's a killer, and he's not going to do anything with you as his manager out here selling coffee and dancing for these people. No, he's a killer. You tell him to call me when he wants to talk about business. And of course, everyone's like, oh, business. So all signs are pointing to MVP bringing in the Hurt Business. I think Hurt Syndicate is the name that's been kicked around, with Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin joining the fray, rumored to be happening this October. So who knows? It could be any week now. And honestly, if Swerve Strickland, Bobby Lashley is something we're getting by Wrestle Dream or like near the end of the year, like sign me up for that. That would be incredible. I would love every second of that. If we get a Swerve with Prince Nana in his corner versus Lashley with MVP, yes, I'm very behind that. And we also had a big development in the world title match for Wrestle Dream where Jon Moxley defeated Darby Allin in the main event of this Dynamite in brutal fashion. Just a grisly match. If Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson was a blood feud, like this was just like a blood match. Like two dudes that don't have that deep contempt, just like kind of trying to murder each other. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's brutal. I don't know what happened, but Darby Allin's face was bleeding, like his mouth was bleeding really early in the match. And I think it happened because he got put on the ropes and Jon Moxley kicked the rope and the rope like whiplashed his mouth. But I'm not 100% sure because it felt like he was in the ring, he was fine, he was in the rope, he was out on the mat outside, and he was gushing blood from his mouth. So who knows when that happened, but Jon Moxley picks up the win, and with that, takes the AEW World Title shot from Darby Allin. So now it will be Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson at Wrestle Dream in Bryan Danielson's hometown, where who knows, anything can happen. Bryan is out for revenge. He said, "You want war, you'll get war. Let's go." There's a great callback to his first run with NXT and WWE, where he came out and choked Moxley with a tie, with just a necktie, which was incredible. And this build is going to be insane because, like, with someone like Moxley as the opponent, we could literally at any point Bryan Danielson could be like, "All right, I lost, I'm out." Like, it's all conceivable in a way that it wouldn't have been if it was Darby Allin still. Like, if it was Darby Allin and he beat Bryan Danielson and retired him or removed him from full time activity, it would feel kind of like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He had to put over the new guy. He wanted to put over the younger guy and help him establish himself and give him the bump and all that. But with Moxley, there's an air of unpredictability, unpredictability to it that I think really is going to help overall. I think it's going to be a way more impactful feud and match with the really literally anything could happen. Where with Darby Danielson, it kind of would feel like not like quite like a full anointing, but it would feel like, okay, we know what everyone's here for. And then, as I said at the start of the episode, the big story this week is the news that came out this morning that Rey Fenix was going to have injury time added to his contract that looks to be under a year, but like barely under a year. It's probably like 10 months, 10 months added onto his contract for time missed. It is the first time that we have heard that this has happened in AEW, that Tony Khan has done this. Usually it is the opposite. People have worked out their deal or they have requested a release quietly, and it's been pretty accommodating. And so the discourse that has been happening today, the discourse that has been happening all around this today has been insane. There are people that think this is all proof that Tony Khan is a horrible boss. And so something like this is going to be polarizing because this is something that impacts both companies. Fans are already pretty passionate to the point of tribalistic when it comes to defending their company. And so there's a side that says Tony Khan is miserable for doing this. Why would he do this? It's awful. There's a side that says, WWE and the Lucha Bros and everyone should be like, okay, you reap what you sow. Like, why did we make this like the worst kept secret in wrestling the last couple months? There's kind of just a lot of blame to go around for everyone for this. So the reports that the Lucha Bros were going to WWE have been going on for a few months now, and they have not been on TV. There were reports that they did not want to come out and job to anyone else, lose to anyone else on the way out the door. And the reports, for who knows how true this is, by the way, all of this is just reported. But the reports are that Penta and Phoenix, to a lesser extent, mostly Penta, were like backstage talking about the deal they got. Like, oh man, this WWE deal, let me tell you, whew, what a deal, man. Oh, you've never seen a deal as good as this deal. Man, this WWE deal. And then somewhere along the way, Conan got involved as well via his podcast, where he kind of started saying, oh man, I'm gonna walk those guys through the door in WWE, man. They're gonna be such a big deal. Oh man. So like, who knows how true any of that is outside of the Conan stuff, because that was on podcast. But if that's the case, and they kind of just kept bringing it up and mentioning it and mentioning it, and they're not working, and they're constantly talking about what a better place it's going to be once they leave and go to WWE, and how much better WWE is going to be, and the deal they got so good, like, you kind of can't blame Tony Khan. Like, say what you will about him as a billionaire, and I saw a lot of people pull that card too and be like, wow, you're so mad, you hate WWE so much, you're going to defend a billionaire for their decisions. Like, it feels like a bad faith argument to an extent. Say what you will about Tony Khan, the man clearly cares and is clearly a well-liked boss amongst the talent that he works with for, the most part. There's always going to be issues that come up. There's always going to be problems. But in my estimation, from what I have seen, it seems like he is a dude that cares about his talent, and the talent likes him in return and respects him in return. And so you get into this situation where, maybe they're not the top stars, but you have two pretty well established and popular tag team wrestlers here, and they're in Death Triangle with Pac, who constantly get big matches as well. Like, you have two pretty well known AEW guys that have been there since day one, running their mouths about going to WWE. And who knows if it was something as simple as like telling people what they were doing. Who knows if it was as braggadocious as maybe the reports want to make it sound. But, you can only do so much. Like, such an interesting thing, because we want Tony Khan and other wrestling owners and management to be like firm and not get walked over, be like, why would you do that? But we also don't want things like this, because at the end of the day, they're not punishing, like, Tony Khan adding this time on doesn't punish WWE. It doesn't, like, maybe it sends a message to other wrestlers on the roster, but what it does is it ruins the earning potential for Rey Fenix and possibly Penta. Penta, when his contract is up, who knows? Maybe he goes to WWE for, 6 months by himself. And if he does that, that's an interesting thing when you consider the reports where, they already have plans creatively in place for them in WWE as a tag team. So it's messy. It's really messy to be, to be for sure. Like, it's messy to have this come out like this. It's messy to have it be, no, we tacked on time for injury, when everyone knows exactly, what brought all of this about. It's petty. It's the type of stuff that you see people online saying like, this isn't cool, man. This isn't the alternative to WWE. This is what WWE would do. And, WWE does have the 90-day non-compete clauses in their contract. So when they let someone go, there is always that 90-day clause. AEW does not have that. Make of that what you will. But it really is an odd spot to be in, because you have these two well-established stars. Tony Khan probably doesn't want to look awful, but you can only, make him a fool so long. He'll only suffer as a fool for so long. Before, you have to kind of send some type of message. There's been so many reports about contract issues in AEW, and this kind of recontextualized a lot of it, because, Miro is someone who has not been seen in weeks. Wardlow is someone who has not been seen in months. Ricky Starks has not been seen, and all of them have had rumors about them asking for their release, requesting a release, wanting out of their contract in one way, shape, or form. Daniel Garcia, it's not even known if he has signed a new contract or if he's going to be leaving. And like, all of a sudden, it's a lot of these younger stars are really in question. Like their status is in a question that it wasn't in before. I read something tonight. I don't know how true it is, because it was just online, but I read something tonight that said that the average age of talent shown on AEW right now is older than the average age of talent that is shown on WWE right now. And that feels crazy to me. AEW was always the young, exciting, fresh new company. And I don't know if this is just injuries. I don't know if this is people not, being utilized enough, or if this is just like younger wrestlers are having their contracts expire and they're leaving and going somewhere else. Like, it's crazy to think that AEW started as the alternative that was showcasing crazy fun indie wrestling that was not usually on TV for fans to watch, is now running, older than WWE, even when you think about how many established veterans there are in WWE right now. So I was shocked to read that. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure how true that is. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will, but it is kind of hard to ignore. You have guys like MVP, Chris Jericho, Roderick Strong, even like Mark Briscoe, those guys. Like there is a lot of older talent, for sure. The Young Bucks aren't as young as they used to be. Like it's interesting once you kind of start to go through it. You have Samoa Joe, you have the Big Show who pops up on commentary and things. It's interesting. It's crazy to think that that's where we are now. So I think the like, in summary, what I want to say is, like, if they were running around talking about their deal and how awesome it was compared to AEW and how much better WWE was going to be, and just actively bad mouthing the place, then that's poor form. It looks bad to do this to Rey Fenix alone, and it looks really bad to do this to just Rey Fenix. And like I said, there's no union in wrestling. Obviously, that's such a hot topic. It's such a big conversation. There's no union in wrestling, so it's not like Rey Fenix can fight for. It's not like he can fight for lost wages. And if they keep him under contract for 10 months and don't use him, and he's just sitting there collecting checks to do nothing, then that's a hit to his career as well, because that's a like 10 months, 11 months of matches you're not having. It's 10, 11 months of shape you're not staying in for wrestling. And so it's just interesting. It's a bummer all around that it had to get to this point. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what the degree of which these guys were talking about WWE was actually. I don't know if we'll ever actually hear what that is, but it's a shame that it got to this point, because they are, like I said, they're AEW originals that have been there and that have consistently, like, shown up and shown out when asked to. Every time they've been put in a big match, they have basically met it and risen to the occasion and been those reliable wrestlers for them. And so to see the relationship deteriorate like this, where Penta might be gone and Rey Fenix is just sitting unused in the back, like that's a bummer. It's a shame to see it get to that point, because it should not have gotten to that point. I understand Tony Khan had to put on his boss hat. Maybe he didn't like it. People don't like it because he's got that, that happy-go-lucky kind of like, oh shucks, I'm so happy to be here attitude when it comes to a lot of this stuff, because it is, he's living his dream. He's like Richie Rich, like, woke up and went out and bought a wrestling company, and now he gets to just do what he's always wanted to do. I just think that the vitriol back and forth about Tony and about the companies and about all of that is too much. It's too much to put into this, because at the end of the day, it is wrestling, and it is a business. And if I went to the company that I worked at and started telling every single person I worked with how much better the new company I'm about to work at is in like 2 weeks, I don't think I would be there 2 weeks. Like, I don't think I would make it the 2 weeks to get to to get out of that contract event. Like, they would absolutely fire my ass. Like, my work would not listen to that for a second. I don't think anyone's work would listen to that for a second. And so to think that that can happen in something like a major wrestling company, like, it's a little different because it's all public for everyone to see, and these stories always get out. So it is perceived a little differently. But if any of us tried anything like that or did anything like that, I don't think we would have much different of a ending. We probably wouldn't be kept on and paid to not work. I can tell you that. We would probably all be looking for work. And so it's such a weird thing to have happen in wrestling, because it's such a magnifying glass on everything. Everything is just under the scope so much. But I kind of just think it's kind of a shame that this happened at all to anyone. And because I don't want to end on that downer note, I will say as well, shout out Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, and the Young Bucks for having an incredible tag team match. I knew it was going to be a good match. I was a little disheartened at the thought of, like, fixing the AEW tag division was putting two single stars that used to tag together and, like, setting them loose. But the match was awesome. I'm a little tired of the Don Callis interference being the same thing every big match. Every big match is, let me give you a screwdriver, like, go wild, buddy. I'm really tired of that. I think this is probably setting up an Ospreay losing to Ricochet next week on Dynamite's 5th anniversary. I'm sure it's going to be some type of Don Callis betrayal, and then he goes right back into that. Like, you know, the Chris Jericho vortex. We got the Don Callis vortex too, where this association and this feud will probably never end now, which is a bummer because I'm sure the longer this goes on, the more it keeps Ospreay away from the main event scene, which you can't put him right back there super quick when you have these other stories unfolding. I understand. I just kind of wish he was going to get a little bit more than the, like, Don Callis, you know, turned Kyle Fletcher on him and set everything up. And, you know, it kind of just feels like we all know what's coming with that. So, like, let's get it moving so we can get on to the next thing almost. But if you did not watch that match, like, I sound very negative right now, but the match was incredible. I really enjoyed it. Those guys, specifically Fletcher and Ospreay, work so well together. They're such a good team. Hopefully we get the full United Empire reunion at some point. That would be awesome to see them kind of take a run at the trios titles again. But that, I think, is everything on my cheat sheet here. So if there's anything I missed, or if you have any thoughts on anything that happened this week, anything you liked or didn't like, or opinions on this whole Lucha Bros AEW contract situation, please hit the comment section. Send in an email. The email address is always in the description or in the show notes. Thank you very much for watching along, listening along. Next week will be a little bit of a different type of week. I'm not sure how I'm going to do everything yet, because next week I will be actually at the LA Comic-Con through the weekend. So if you're going to that, or if you have anything you would like to see from that, please shout that out as well. I would love to hear from anyone involved in that. So thank you guys very much for listening, watching, anything you do. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you next week.